Okay, this is a video for how to set up and run an offlane clock for your shipments. So when you set up these warplanes and you're using the drone to deliver your shipments to the things that are in the lane, I kind of talked about how you have to fly out and you have to pick up all the shipments that go to your in-lane planets. Uh, but this is for the ones that they start on the offlane planets and they go to other offlane planets, or they start on your in-lane planets and they go to your offlane planets. So it's a little bit of work to set up, and I intentionally held back shipments for about 36 hours just so I would have some big like groups of them to show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start setting it up, and I will fast forward through most of it so that it doesn't take an entire hour. But basically, what you're doing is you set up different cogs, and uh, you use those as smaller sections to run. So for my system, I set up two cogs. I set up these two planets, and then I set up these three planets. And so what that means is that I take every shipment that goes to Andronov and I put it on Clarence, and I put everything for Clarence onto Andronov. And then for these, um, everything that goes to Routh, I put on Rendon. Everything that goes to the Trade Center, I put on Routh, and everything that goes to Rendon, I put on the Trade Center. Okay, so that is the basic example. I will speed this up later for you, and I'll talk about like different methods, different ways you can set up on top of this at the end of the video, I think. All right, cool. Okay, so what I was originally going to do is play music during uh, ship movements here. Um, but the video is kind of getting long, and so I decided to just come back and insert my voice here, which is fine. So while I'm doing this, I mean, you can kind of just watch. It's fairly straightforward, and I'm only going to do part of it, and I just cut it at that point because it's the same thing everywhere. Basically, you just move whatever you need to move for the cog that you're working on, and then repeat for every cog, and then I kind of break open and talk about running it. But while I was doing this, I was going to talk about the difference between having one cog or having multiple cogs. And I think the biggest thing about it is going to be your geographic layout of your system. So, I mean, it's very possible. Like I have mine set up where all of my off-lane planets are right here in this nice little area, and they're all kind of touching. But if you didn't plan your system intentionally, or even if you did and you just didn't, or you had like really bad luck, then you could very well end up with off-lane planets that are not close together. And when you get to that situation, then you really have to kind of decide, okay, so how am I going to set this up? How am I going to run it? And the easy answer is, if at all possible, um, make sure that off-lane planets always have, like they're always in pairs or trios, or you don't just have one that's off by itself. And if you do end up in that situation, what you can do is put a trade station next to it. In my system, I'm really hoping that I can put all three of my trade systems or my trade stations in sectors that touch. But if it doesn't work out, that's one really cool use for the trade stations, is you can effectively use them to make a new cog, which is really nice. Uh, Now, as for whether it's better or not, I think there's pros and cons to both. I think at the end, geography is the deciding factor, and if you are able to do it either way, then it's personal preference. Um, the biggest issue I had is before I colonized Andronov and Daedalus, uh, I was running Routh, Rendon, my trade station, and Clarence all together, and they were just a 4 planet hub or 4 planet cog. And so the biggest problem I ran into was it seems like no matter what I did, every time I ran it, there was one planet that just got a significant number, or yes, significantly fewer shipments sent to it. And so you end up with this place in your cycle where you're not carrying anything. And the thing is that's going to happen no matter what. It happens in this example that I'm doing here, um, but it feels worse when you're doing a really big cog, especially if it runs out and you don't just have like one more lap to do. Like I had a planet run out one time, and I think I did 3 more laps. And the thing about it is because it's a cycle, the planet that goes to it, if it still has shipments, then you still have to keep driving to it. And every time you get there, you're never going to pick anything up because it's empty. And I feel like that problem kind of goes away with smaller cogs. Um, Having said that, it is still there. And it's just something that you will have to deal with either way. I talk about a little bit about how shipments are generated in my other video. Uh, but I think the other thing that really affects this is how often you do this per day. I do it once a day. Like in this example, this is a 36-hour save up. This is meant to be big just to show you how it works. Um, but but in 24 hours you get plenty, and it's definitely, yeah, any more than 24 hours is probably you're losing money just because your planet stopped producing shipments at a certain point. Um, Unless you move them, store them somewhere else or something. But I know a lot of people run it twice a day, like every 12 hours or something, and that works fine. What it will mean is that you'll need two transports that have shipment computer and your boost and burst modules. I, I mean, I guess hypothetically you don't, but if you're going to run it twice a day, I think it's a good idea because you want to be getting those bonuses anytime you can. Um, if you run it, if you run it twice a day, you will have these problems where you don't have enough shipments going to one planet and you have like blank spots. That's going to happen more often if you run it twice a day. And the reason for that is just variance. You have a smaller time slice, and your planets haven't necessarily started hitting average where they were, kind of everybody's making the same number of shipments to go to Rendon. And you can monitor that if you just move all the shipments you have in your whole system and then wait until it clicks over and then just kind of look at each planet and where they're going to. And it's pretty common that you'll end up with like one planet that nobody made a shipment for this hour. And so with smaller time slices, that gets worse. Um, but at the end of the day, this is, I don't think it's a huge idea or a huge difference in your total profit. It really does come down to how do you want to do it, what do you have time to do, and what do you prefer. Okay, so before I start this is just kind of how it gets set up, right? So everything here goes to this planet like that, then those go there, and that's going to go there too. And then these two planets just feed into each other. And the only difference I did is I have this planet, which has a little bit that goes to both. And this is just me personally. It's just kind of how I think about it, I guess. So trade burst has a burn-in threshold. So it doesn't activate until you deliver 16 shipments. Okay. So my transports hold 13. So if this planet has 3 that go to here, then I can pick them up. Boom, boom. So that'll be my first 3, and then it'll pick up 13 more to here, and that'll be my perfect 16 burn-in. And the only reason I do that is because I'm pretty sure that if you deliver, like say you need 3 more shipments to hit the threshold, I think if you deliver like 10, then none of them get that bonus. So this kind of just forces it to apply that bonus there. Maybe it's not that important. That's just a little bit of extra credit that I'm squeezing out of it. The other thing is like, just wait. This is a whole minute between these 2 planets. So I usually just wait till the timer gets down to about 10 seconds. Again, that's just efficiency, and your phone signal can absolutely ruin you, so whatever. For the trade boost, I don't usually activate it until I'm doing this side. And really, the only reason is because it's going to be a lot more shipments over here, and I'm worried that if I activate it here, I might not deliver as many shipments with it because there is dead time between the cogs. So, all right, so C kicked off. Boom, I've got 3 of my 16 delivered. And then this will be my next 13. And I set this up to go twice. I think I'm probably going to have to go 3 times each. But what I'll do is I'll just react to kind of how it is. And usually if say there's only like 5 shipments left in one direction or the other, I won't do those until the very end, which might mean that they don't get a bonus, but mostly I'm trying to make sure that any deliveries I make that have 13 full shipments all get trade burst, and then if I'm lucky, they'll get burst and boost. But what I'll do there is I'll just come down there, and then I'll start this clockwork here. Boom, so there you go. There's my 16, activated burst. Boom. Okay. All right, so while that runs, we'll talk a little bit about the overall idea here. And trying to decide whether or not you should do this, it's something that you're just going to have to decide for yourself. And, it's one of those things where it's like for me personally, I recommend doing this with your offlane shipments. I think it's totally worth it. But there definitely are different points in the game where it is more or less worth it. And, like, I can analyze your system. I can look at it, kind of see how things are going, and I can give you how I feel. But honestly, it's something that you're going to get a lot more if you really understand how this works and get a feel for it. It's something that you're going to be able to make that call better than anybody else, because you know your practice is better. You know whether or not you're on it every morning at 6 a.m. and you always run your shipments, or you wake up and some days you run it, some days it doesn't happen until noon. Just different things like that, and how you play is going to change how you feel about it. So I think the best way to break it down is to just analyze the economy in Hades Star. Basically, what it comes down to is Hydro is worthless on its own. The only value that hydrogen has is how much credit you can get for the hydro you spend. And so there are two kind of economic economic schools of thought that go into this. And the way they work is pretty simple. You can either judge your economy based on hydrogen efficiency, and to get an idea of how that is, if you just go to your My Empire tab, look at the number of credits you make in a day, and then look at the number of hydrogen that you spent today. Divide the credits by the hydrogen, and that's your efficiency ratio. That is, for every hydrogen, I made this many credits. And that is a perfectly good metric to measure your success. And especially early, it's a very important one because before your system grows to a certain extent, hydrogen problems are more common, and they may not be as bad, but they seem like they happen more often. And in the early game, you have this rubber banding effect where one day you have 3 days worth of artifacts saved up, and you've run all your shipments, and for some reason you're still almost totally full of hydrogen. And then 2 days later, it's the exact opposite. Like, you're broke, you can't run any red stars, you've burned all your artifacts, you can't even move your shipments, and you're going, why don't I have hydrogen? So, just that's kind of just a gut feeling as well. You just kind of get to play, and you figure that kind of stuff's easy to figure out. The other model to measure your economy is just the bottom line on credits, and you basically totally ignore your hydrogen spending, and you just say, well, today I made 150,000 credits. And I think that gets more and more viable the further into the game you get, because your hydrogen economy does stabilize, and because you upgrade your miners, it becomes less of an issue. Basically, you get to the point where if it exists, if you can get to hydrogen, then you're good to go. And then you also have fewer and fewer moments where your entire system is mined out. So the thing about those two things is basically it all comes down to, are you running out of hydrogen a lot? If you're in this place where you keep having these moments where you go hydrogen bankrupt, then you definitely do. You need to concentrate on things that improve your hydrogen efficiency. On the other hand, if you're always sitting at 50,000 hydrogen and you never seem to burn it, then you can kind of throw efficiency out of the window. If there's a way for you to make more credits, even if it's less efficient, it should be fine because you always run a surplus of hydrogen. That's no big deal. So all of this whole idea comes down, and this is like a side effect of using warplanes and using a shipment drone. So the first thing is, a shipment drone is a boost to your hydrogen efficiency. Okay, it has a very small cargo hold, and it has a very small bonus. Level 1, you can have a max of 4 shipments, and if you have 4, you get a 12% bonus. Okay, where I'm at, my shipment computer by itself is an 18% bonus. If I stack on trade boost and trade burst, I get close to a 40% bonus. And I know that in here there's one point where I drop off a load of shipments and it's 5,000 credit profit, and then the number in the bonus section is 2,000. I mean, that's a 40% cut that I'm getting that I wouldn't get if I was running those on a shipment drone, which obviously I can't because they're offlane, but you get the picture. And that's the thing about shipment drone. Like if you're using it, you do need to understand that you will not make as many credits. It is possible to make shipment drone very good for how many credits it makes, but you do have to level it up. And it doesn't really start getting anywhere close to your regular transports until it's like level 6 or 7. And even then, it's only that good if it's completely full. If it's not, then it's still just terrible. The other thing that it really saves, and this is why most people use it, is time, because it's just so easy to log on, hit a button, and okay, that is X percentage of all my shipments done for me. And at level 1, it's super cheap. 500 hydro is really good. I mean, you're doing, I tried to figure it one time. I think it's like, I don't know, 70% of my economy gets handled by a shipment drone, and I'll fire it off 3 or 4 times a day. So, so I'm making 70% of my shipments cost 2,000 hydrogen. And I didn't actually do the math or check it in this video, but I guess you can. There's no telling what I spend every night running these offline shipments. It's a lot more than 2,000. I know it is. And the thing is I'm, you compare the profit, and I'm really not making that much extra. But the thing is it can't be run by the drone yet, and I'm gonna have to do it either way. So setting up a Clockwork system for your offline shipments, it is not an efficiency boost. This will 100% of the time cost you more hydrogen than just delivering the shipments. So my biggest advice is if you're having hydrogen problems, don't do this. Ignore this whole video until you get to a point where you can afford it. And then at that point, I think it is the best method. And the reason for this is obvious just by looking at it. I mean, if you're just delivering, then yeah, you're still going to have to pick up all the shipments, and you're still going to have to take them to the planet they go to. But that is always going to be cheaper than picking up all the shipments, delivering them all to one place that isn't their final destination, and then you come back around again later and pick them all up and send them to the destination. Right? I mean, it's common sense that is going to be more expensive. And, I mean, that's okay. It really does get down to the point where, like, I have asteroid fields that don't get mined all the time, and I don't need to mine them. So it's worth my effort to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to make sure that if it costs me 5 times as much hydrogen, I'm going to squeeze every credit I can out of this. So, I mean, that's kind of how that works. There are ways that you could, or there is a method of maximizing your drone profit. It's called stacking. And I can do a video over it if somebody's interested. I don't really think that it's all that impressive when your drone is level 1. But I mean, it would be an increase in credits. I'm just not sure how big of one. And I'm still at this point where I look at shipment drone and I'm like, well, okay, I could make a little bit more money with it, but I'm literally going to double the cost. It moves from 500 hydrogen to 1,000, and that just seems really expensive to me. I will get there, I'm sure, when I get more warplanes and things like that, but for now, I don't do it. But I know how to set it up, and if somebody's interested, I can do that. I don't mind. So I mean, yeah, that's kind of all my advice about this. I'm not really sure if there's a point I've ignored or forgotten about. But of course, if you have questions, just ask. And it doesn't necessarily have to be me either. if you ask a question on there on Discord, um, I mean, any officer or any other member at all that has played the game for very long, I'm sure they would help you out. It's just whether or not they feel comfortable in it. You know, if you ask somebody something and they don't feel like they're good enough to answer it, that's one thing. But I don't really think that that's a problem that we'll run into. Um, a lot of how this works is dependent on how your system gets set up and how lucky you are with planet placements. So that's one of the big things that we always recommend for newer members is to, when you start building scanners, make sure you ask. I mean, you know, you don't have to do what we say, and we're not gonna care if you ignore us. But it adds up, and I mean, it doesn't feel like a huge deal when it happens. But if you think about like the extra hydro you spend to drive to a planet that's just poorly placed, and you're going to do that how many times a day? And then you're going to do it that many times a day, every day for, you know, the next month even is just an insane cost. And it's just one of those hidden costs. There's huge differences between what your hydro efficiency is just based on where did you put your warplanes and how lucky did you get with planet spawns. And everybody has different opinions on it. So no big deal. Just ask if you want help. And I think that's about it. The only other video I have planned is I'm really wanting to do a time warp video because I understand how time warp should work, but I'm becoming less and less convinced that the way it does work in combat is the way it's supposed to work. I was having a conversation the other day on the official Discord, and a couple of guys were trying to come up with scenarios that you could abuse time warp in. And they were looking at white stars, but it would apply to red stars or in the future blue stars as well, I assume. So I've been wanting to do it for a while, and I think that's going to be my next thing. It should be a short, like 5-10 minute video maybe. And I need to actually, you know, do white star replays because I did one and then never did it again. So I will work on that. But if there's anything you would like demonstrated or just something that you'd like to have a video like explanation of rather than just me typing in Discord, just leave a comment below, tell me, or message me on Discord or something. If you don't want to do it in the group chat, you can PM me. No big deal. Otherwise, I think that's pretty good. So I hope everyone had an awesome Thanksgiving, and I'll catch you later.